What if the greatest hero of a nation was also its most prolific killer? A man who fought alongside a saint but prayed to the devil. How does a Marshal of France become the demon of France? This case was never solved. No trial, no confession, no justice. What follows is a medieval death, reopened centuries later. This is Medieval Cold Cases. In the autumn of 1440, in the Duchy of Brittany, an investigation began. It was an investigation into a man named Gilles de Rais, a man accused of the most unspeakable crimes. But the official record, the one written by the church, it doesn't tell the whole story. To understand the monster they put on trial, you first have to understand the hero, the man they called the Marshal of France. His name was Gilles de Laval, Baron de Rais. Born into one of the most powerful and wealthiest families in all of France, he was a man who seemed destined for greatness from his first breath. An orphan by the age of 11, he was already a lord of vast estates, a commander of men. By the time he was 25, he had already fought in brutal campaigns for his country, distinguishing himself as a fearless and capable soldier. He was everything a 15th century man was supposed to be: rich, powerful, pious, or so it seemed. But every story has a shadow, a place where the light doesn't reach. And Gilles de Rais' story has a shadow so dark, so profound, that it threatens to consume the light entirely. What you are about to see is an investigation into a man of two faces, a man who stood at the right hand of a living, breathing saint, and a man who, they say, sacrificed the innocent to the devil himself. The year is 1429. France is on its knees, bleeding out from 100 years of war with England. The English control the north, and the rightful heir to the throne, a man named Charles, is a coward, too afraid to even be crowned. The French are a broken people, their spirit crushed. They need a miracle. And into this war-torn, God-forsaken land, a miracle appears. A 17-year-old peasant girl from a small village called Domremy, a girl who claims to hear the voice of God, the voices of Saint Michael, Saint Catherine, and Saint Margaret. She says they have told her to lead the French army and crown the Dauphin king. The court at Chinon is skeptical. The hardened old generals laugh. But one man of immense power and influence, listens. He believes. That man was Gilles de Rais. He wasn't just a casual supporter. He became her sworn protector, her personal guard, her companion in arms. He used his vast, seemingly endless fortune to fund her army, paying for soldiers and supplies when the royal treasury was empty. He led her troops in battle, his banner flying alongside hers. He was with her at the siege of Orléans, when they broke the English back. He was with her at Jargeau, at Patay, at every single major victory on the path to Reims. He was the sword. She was the divine will. He was the hero of France, a living legend, a man who had fought alongside a saint, a man who had helped save a nation from the brink of destruction. This is the face the world saw, the face of a patriot, a warrior, a nobleman, a hero. But masks are meant to be removed, and behind the face of the hero, something else was lurking, something hungry, something ancient, something evil. After Joan of Arc was captured and burned at the stake by her English and Burgundian enemies, Gilles de Rais was a hero without a war. He retreated to his castles, a man adrift in a sea of his own wealth and sorrow. And it is there, in the dark, silent halls of his fortress of Tiffauges, that our true investigation begins. It is there that the hero of France began his descent into the abyss. This is the story of that descent, a story of a man who had everything and threw it all away for a taste of the forbidden. This is the case of the demon of France. And what followed was not a quiet retirement. It was a campaign of spectacular, obscene excess, a frantic attempt to fill the void left by war and faith with gold and spectacle. He threw a party for the Duke of Orleans that cost the modern equivalent of millions. He staged a play about his greatest victory, the Siege of Orleans, and spent a fortune on costumes and scenery, only to weep openly when it was over. Within a decade, he was broke. He had sold off his lands, his castles, his ancestral treasures. He was a man who had gone from the richest man in France to a debtor on the verge of ruin. And historians have debated for centuries what happened next. Was it a descent into madness fueled by financial desperation, or was it something else entirely? A conscious choice. The case file shows he surrounded himself with a new kind of court. Not nobles, but occultists. Priests who had been defrocked. Men who promised him what God no longer would. A shortcut back to power. The central figure was an Italian priest from Florence, a man named Francesco Prelati. Prelati wasn't just an alchemist. He was a self-proclaimed necromancer. And he told Gilles that the secrets of the universe could be his for a price. The price, according to the later testimony of his own servants, was blood. Not just any blood. The blood of innocent children. This is the turning point. The moment the hero of France allegedly became the predator of France. The quest for gold had turned into a hunt for souls. And it was here, in the dark, silent halls of his fortress of Tiffauges, that the hero of France began his descent into the abyss. The disappearances started slowly. A beggar boy here, a 10-year-old shepherd there. In the rural lands of a powerful lord, children went missing. It was a fact of life in the 15th century. But then, the pattern became undeniable. The victims were always young, always male, and they were always last seen in the company of Gilles de Rais' men. They would lure them to the castle with a promise of food, of work, of a place to sleep. The promise was a lie. This is where our investigation turns from rumor to record. We have our first official witness, Jeanette du Guesclin. Her son Jamet vanished in September of 1432. She testified that she went to the castle of Champtocé to demand his return. She was turned away, threatened. The families of the missing children began to talk. They began to fear. Gilles' own family, the powerful de Craon clan, pleaded with him to stop. But he was a Marshal of France. He was untouchable. He was protected by his title and his private army. The local authorities were powerless. It would take an act of treason to finally bring him down. In 1440, Gilles de Rais finally went too far. In a dispute over a castle, he kidnapped a priest. He declared war on his own cousin. This was no longer a matter of missing peasants. This was a direct challenge to the authority of the Church and the Duke of Brittany. The Duke finally had his pretext. He didn't send a police force. He sent an army. And on September 15th, 1440, they laid siege to the castle of Champtocé. They weren't there to arrest a traitor. They were there to uncover a horror. The case of the missing children was about to become a case of mass murder. When the Duke's men finally entered Gilles' castles, they found more than just a rebellious nobleman. They found a charnel house. They found the evidence. They found the bodies, dozens of them buried in the grounds. But the real evidence came from the living. Gilles' own servants, men who had been too terrified to speak. Now, with their master imprisoned, they talked. The first to break was his bodyguard, Henriette. He described the entire operation, how Gilles would fly into a rage if a child wasn't found, how he would choose his victims with the care of a connoisseur. He was the eyewitness. He placed Gilles at the scene. He described the rooms, the weapons, the exact words Gilles would say. The second witness was Poitou. He was the one who lured the children. He was the one who held them down. His testimony was even more graphic. He described the rituals, the prayers to the demon baron. He described how Gilles would take pleasure in the severed heads of his victims and would sometimes command him to cut open a body to see what was inside. These are not the ravings of a single madman. This is a coordinated testimony from multiple witnesses, given independently. The details, they are too consistent, too specific to be a lie. They described how the murders would often take place in a specific room, while Gilles hung from a hook like a bat. They described how he would kiss the children before he killed them. The sheer methodical depravity is breathtaking. And the number 800, it's an estimate, an admission from the man himself that he had lost count. That the number was so vast, it no longer mattered. He wasn't just a killer. He was an industry of death. Faced with the mountain of evidence and the testimony of his own men, Gilles de Rais did something no one expected. He broke. But the manner of his breaking is the first great mystery of his trial. Was it the collapse of a guilty soul, or the calculated performance of a master manipulator? The official transcript tells us he confessed to everything, to the heresy, the alchemy, the summoning of demons, and he confessed to the murders. In graphic, nauseating detail, he wept, he begged for forgiveness, he said he was horrified by his own actions. He repented. It was a perfect show of remorse, a perfect deathbed conversion. And for that, the church granted him mercy. Before his body was burned at the stake, he was strangled. A final act of compassion, they said, a sign that his soul had been saved. On October 26, 1440, the demon of France was dead. Case closed. A monster captured. A confession given. A sentence served. But our investigation isn't over, because a good detective always questions the confession. Was this a genuine moment of remorse? A man finally confronting the evil he had become? Or was it a performance? A final, cynical act of financial planning? Think about it. By confessing to the religious crimes, he could guarantee a quick execution. By confessing to the murders, he could protect his family from having their lands and titles seized by the state. Was it a soul salvation or a final cynical act of estate management? This is where our case splits in two. This is where we have to consider a second, more disturbing possibility. A growing number of modern historians believe Gilles de Rais was the victim of a massive conspiracy, a frame-up orchestrated by the church and the state to seize his remaining lands. They point to the fact that the Duke of Brittany, who led the investigation, stood to gain financially from Gilles' downfall. They point to the fact that the main witnesses, Henriette and Poitou, were tortured before they testified. They argue that Gilles was a brutal, arrogant nobleman who made powerful enemies. And they framed him for the one crime that guaranteed he would be executed and disinherited: heresy. The murders, they say, were a fabrication to sell the bigger crime, a story so monstrous, so unbelievable, that it had to be true. A story designed to shock the public and justify the seizure of his wealth. They point to the inconsistencies in the testimonies, the lack of physical evidence for the 800 murders, and the political climate of the time, a time when the church was cracking down on any form of dissent. But then we have to ask ourselves, what about the children? What about the dozens of parents who testified that their children went missing near his castles? What about the bodies that were found? What about the sheer methodical depravity described by his own servants? Was it all a lie? A coordinated, massive conspiracy involving dozens of people? Or was there a kernel of truth to it? Did Gilles de Rais perhaps commit some of these crimes, but not on the scale he was accused of? Was he a killer, but not a monster? Or a monster, but not a demon? This is the heart of the mystery. The truth is likely somewhere in the middle, a complex, messy truth buried under layers of myth, propaganda, and fear. The official record calls him a monster, a demon. But the evidence is stained. The testimony was extracted under duress. The confession came at a convenient time. We've presented you with the case file, the hero, the monster, the evidence, and the conspiracy. Now it's your turn to be the detective. Was Gilles de Rais one of the worst serial killers in history, or the victim of the most successful frame-up of the medieval era? The verdict is up to you. Let us know what you think in the comments. This was a medieval cold case.